The early morning mist hung low over the golden grass, carrying the faint scent of dew and earth. She paused, frozen by a sound that did not belong, a soft, low moan that resonated through the sparse trees. At first, she thought it was a small animal, perhaps trapped or hurt, but then she saw the outline. He lay sprawled beneath an acacia, muscles slack, eyes half-closed, ears twitching at the slightest sound. The lion she had raised from a cub, now grown and regal, seemed fragile, an image she had never imagined. His mane, once lustrous, appeared matted and dusty, and a thin streak of blood traced a shallow wound across his shoulder. She knelt a careful distance away, letting the cool air settle around her. Every instinct whispered to run closer, to touch, to comfort, yet experience reminded her of the space he needed. Quietly, she spoke, her voice barely above the wind. "It's okay, I'm here." Minutes passed. The lion's ears flicked toward her, a subtle acknowledgement. Then came the first test of patience. He shifted slightly, groaning in discomfort. The sight tightened her chest. The once bold eyes now carried a weariness that mirrored time and the harshness of the wild. She scanned the surrounding bush. Signs of struggle were faint but telling. Broken branches, a patch of disturbed dirt. It was clear he had fought or fled. The knowledge settled over her like a shadow, but alongside it rose determination. She would not leave him here, alone and hurt. Not after everything. Her approach was measured, each step a careful negotiation with trust. The lion watched, head tilting, every muscle tense yet not hostile. He knew her scent, her presence. It was recognition and hesitation entwined. She crouched and extended a hand, not to touch but to offer a silent promise. "You're safe now," she whispered. And in that whisper, the first thread of their reunion began to weave. The wind shifted, brushing her hair across her face, carrying the smell of the lion's musk. She realized that danger was not only from the outside world, snakes, poachers, the harsh terrain, but from approaching a creature capable of immense power yet wounded, wary, and mistrusting. As the sun rose fully, painting the grass in gold, the lion stirred again. His eyes met hers. In that gaze, she saw memory, recognition, and a shadow of their old bond. She did not move faster, she waited, letting him decide the pace. For the first time in days, she allowed herself a single deep breath. They were together again, but the path ahead was fragile. The savannah stretched endlessly around them, beautiful and unforgiving, a reminder that every step forward would demand patience, courage, and respect. The distant calls of other animals, cries of hyenas, the trumpeting of elephants, the rustle of monkeys, reminded her of the world that waited beyond this fragile bubble of reunion. And yet, in that quiet morning, it was only the lion and her, bound by history, trust, and the unspoken promise that she would never abandon him. The plains stretched endlessly, golden under the morning sun, yet deceptively treacherous. Thorns snagged her sleeves, and tall grasses whispered with the wind, hiding small, sharp surprises. Every step reminded her how different this reunion was from the playful days when he was a cub. Now, he moved with the weight of experience, cautious yet wary, every muscle taut with instinct. He limped slightly, favoring the wounded shoulder, a subtle rhythm she noted with concern. She adjusted her pace, pausing whenever he slowed, letting him choose the rhythm of their movement. It was not easy. Each patch of dirt seemed to tell a story of struggle, broken branches, deep paw prints, and faint signs of a chase. The savannah was alive, indifferent, and yet intimate, filled with the soft hum of life and subtle danger. Once, a sudden rustle revealed a snake slithering through the grass. The lion froze, muscles rigid, nose twitching. She whispered, barely audible, "It's okay, just breathe." For a moment, time stretched, the world narrowing to breath, tension, and trust. Then he continued, steps careful, deliberate. Every instinct she had learned over years guided her. Patience, respect, and empathy. As they moved, she watched the small shifts of his body, the flick of an ear, the twitch of a tail, the low rumble vibrating through his chest. Each sound, each gesture, told her something she could not hear with human ears alone. He was speaking in a language of subtle signals, and she listened, learning again what it meant to truly know a wild heart. The sun climbed higher, painting the grasses in gold. Dust swirled beneath their feet as she guided him toward a small clearing near a stream. The water shimmered under the sun, cool and inviting, and he approached cautiously, nose quivering. She stayed back, letting him drink first, watching the reflection of his mane in the rippling surface. Scars and dust marked him, yet there was beauty in every line, every mark of survival. She spoke softly as he drank, this way, guiding him toward a shaded area she had prepared, a quiet sanctuary amidst the vast plains. His steps were hesitant but steady, eyes flicking toward her in recognition. The bond between them was no longer just memory, it was being rewritten in each careful movement, each quiet interaction. Birds called from the acacia trees above, insects hummed around their feet, and somewhere, distant lions roared in the heat of the day. All of it was background to the fragile, unspoken communication between human and lion. He moved with grace, testing boundaries, acknowledging her presence without fear. And slowly, imperceptibly, he allowed her closer, trusting the rhythm she offered. By the time the sun tilted toward the west, casting long shadows across the plains, the lion rested in the shade. His breathing was slower, more even, and the tension in his body had lessened. She sat nearby, letting the soft warmth of the sun settle over her, over him, over the bond that had endured years apart. The savannah was still vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, but here, in this small corner of gold and shadow, trust had returned, and patience had borne fruit. The journey was far from over, but for now, they moved together, side by side, two lives connected in silence and understanding, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Twilight draped the plains in a muted glow, stretching shadows that merged with the golden grass. Every step became a careful negotiation with the land, each sound amplified in the quiet evening. The lion walked slightly ahead, head low, muscles coiled like springs. She followed, careful not to disturb his rhythm, noting the subtle signs of tension, the twitch of a tail, the flick of ears, the low rumble from deep in his chest. Then, a glint of metal caught her eye. Her breath caught, and her stomach tightened. A snare, half hidden in the brush, reflected the fading light. Her heart raced, not just for herself but for him. The lion froze mid-step, nose twitching, muscles rigid, sensing danger before she even reached it. His eyes, once soft with recognition, now burned with alertness. She whispered, steadying herself, "Stay back." The words barely rose above the whisper of the wind. The lion shifted, waiting, trusting her judgment, yet ready to act at a moment's notice. Instinct and experience merged in the delicate balance between human and animal. The snare was cruelly simple but deadly. If triggered, it could tear flesh, maim, or even kill. She approached carefully, hands steady, fingers brushing the rope she had brought to disable it. The lion remained motionless, gaze locked on her movements, understanding without words the danger that lay before them. Every second stretched into an eternity. Finally, she cut the wire. The soft snap seemed louder than it should have been in the quiet of the plains. The lion's body relaxed, shoulders dropping, and a low rumble echoed through the air, not a growl, but a sigh of relief. He stepped closer, nudging her gently with his massive head, testing her presence, acknowledging her courage. The sun sank lower, painting the sky in oranges and purples. The plains were alive with sounds, the distant trumpeting of elephants, the rustle of small mammals in the grass, the far-off calls of other lions. And yet, between them, a stillness prevailed. Danger had passed, trust had deepened, and the fragile rhythm of their reunion continued, strengthened by the shared moment of survival. She crouched slightly, hand extended, letting him choose whether to accept the closeness. He nudged her shoulder, a simple gesture but one that spoke volumes, recognition, gratitude, a bond that transcended words. The lion did not act as a pet nor as a wild threat, he existed in the liminal space between respect and connection, wild yet trusting. The plains grew colder as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon. Shadows thickened, and the soft hum of nocturnal life began to rise. She knew they could not linger long, yet for a few precious moments, she allowed herself to simply exist beside him, feeling the weight of his trust and the enormity of the moment. Every instinct had told her caution, yet her courage and patience had been repaid in a language beyond speech. The lion, once fragile and wounded, now showed a quiet acknowledgement, a subtle nod of understanding that they were allies in a world that could be merciless. As night settled over the savannah, she whispered softly, "We're safe, for now." The lion's eyes glimmered in the fading light, a silent answer that spoke of recognition and the bond they shared. He turned toward the open plains, alert but calm, while she stayed close, heart swelling with the quiet knowledge that danger had been faced together and trust had survived. In the shadowed world between day and night, a human and a lion shared a moment of unspoken understanding. The plains stretched endlessly around them, vast and unpredictable, yet within that fragile circle of trust, they had found a safe passage through danger. The journey ahead remained uncertain, but for now, they had each other. Morning arrived softly over the savannah, spilling pale light across the grass and painting the trees in shades of gold and green. The lion rose cautiously from the shaded clearing, muscles rolling under his menere, stretched and tensed as he tested the world again. He moved closer to her, tentative, yet deliberate, nostrils flaring as he took in her familiar scent. She remained still, waiting, letting him decide the pace. "Easy," she murmured, her voice barely above the breeze, offering reassurance instead of command. Hours passed in quiet observation. The lion walked around the clearing, sniffing, circling, testing boundaries. She stayed close, letting him set the rhythm, learning again the language of subtle gestures. A flick of the tail, a low rumble vibrating through his chest, the tension in his shoulders, the shift of his weight. Each motion was deliberate, telling her more than words could. At one point, he approached the stream. She remained at a distance, letting him drink first. Water lapped against his whiskers, reflecting the early sunlight in shimmering patterns. He drank slowly, eyes flicking toward her with recognition, a silent acknowledgement that he trusted her presence. Gradually, he allowed her closer, letting her brush a hand along the flank she had once cradled as a cub. For a few long moments, time seemed suspended. The wind whispered through the acacia leaves, carrying the scent of grass and earth. Birds called overhead, insects hummed softly, and the distant cries of other lions resonated across the plains. Yet within this small clearing, nothing existed except her and him. The lion began moving more confidently now, testing playful nudges, gentle prods, and subtle gestures that invited her participation without demanding it. He rolled onto his side, flopping lazily, eyes half closed, tail flicking in contentment. She mirrored his calm, lowering herself to the ground, careful not to impose, offering the simple presence that had once defined their bond. By midday, they explored the surrounding plains together, walking side by side. Every step strengthened the fragile bridge of trust. She noted small improvements, less stiffness in his limbs, a flicker of curiosity returning to his eyes, a low rumble that vibrated through the air like soft thunder. Each sign was a reminder that healing was gradual, patience necessary, and trust earned rather than commanded. They stopped at the edge of a grove where sunlight filtered through the trees, highlighting the golden patterns of dust and shadow on the ground. He lay down near her, resting his massive head close enough for her to feel the warmth of his breath. She reached out, her hand hovering over his menere, careful, silent, respectful. The lion shifted slightly, nudging her hand with the side of his head, not forceful, not demanding, but deliberate. It was recognition, a gesture that said, "I remember. I trust. I accept." She exhaled softly, letting the emotions rise and settle together, the weight of years and distance melting in the quiet intimacy of that moment. By afternoon, the plains stretched endlessly before them, sun casting long shadows across golden grasses. The lion, once wary, now moved with calm assurance, a partner in this fragile dance of reunion. They had survived danger, shared cautious steps, and rebuilt a bond that seemed almost too delicate to exist in the harsh reality of the wild. As evening approached, the light softened, turning the savannah into a sea of gold and purple. She watched him, breathing in the sound of his slow, steady rumbles. For the first time since their reunion began, she felt certain that trust had been restored, not through force or command, but through patience, care, and understanding. In that quiet golden hour, human and lion shared a silent promise. The world was vast, the future uncertain, but for this moment, they had each other. The sun dipped low over the savannah, casting long shadows that stretched across the golden grass. The air was still, carrying only the scent of earth, dust, and the faint musk of the lion. He walked slowly toward her, menere catching the last rays of light, each step deliberate and measured. She remained seated, heart hammering softly, knowing that whatever happened next would define the culmination of years spent apart. He stopped a few feet away, nostrils flaring as he took in her scent. His eyes, once a playful cub's, now deep and wise, locked onto hers. There was no hesitation, no wariness, only a raw, unspoken acknowledgement that they had found each other again. She whispered, barely audible, "It's okay. I'm here." For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then, with a sudden grace, the lion lowered his massive head and pressed it gently against her shoulder. It was a gesture simple in action but profound in meaning. Trust, recognition, and gratitude radiated in the subtle pressure of his head, a bond beyond words. She exhaled, closing her eyes, letting the warmth and weight settle over her. The lion remained for a long moment, rumbling softly, a sound that vibrated through her chest, a language older than words. She ran her fingers lightly through his menere, careful not to startle him, feeling the coarse texture of years, survival, and resilience. Each strand seemed to tell a story of hardships endured, of the wild's harsh lessons, and of the quiet patience that had brought them here. Then, as if sensing the end of this chapter, he lifted his head slowly, turning toward the open plains. She watched him rise, massive shoulders rolling with controlled power, tail swishing with deliberate calm. But before he disappeared into the tall grass, he paused, glancing back once. It was a final acknowledgement, a silent promise that he remembered her, that he had forgiven absence, that the bond they shared remained unbroken. She remained seated, breathing in the scent of the earth and the lingering warmth of his presence. Around her, the plains stretched endlessly, vast and wild, but the echoes of their reunion lingered, soft and unshakable. The wind stirred the grass, carrying whispers of the moment across the land, as if nature itself acknowledged the quiet miracle of trust restored. Night fell gradually, stars appearing one by one in the deepening sky. Crickets and distant nocturnal calls filled the air, but the memory of the lion pressed gently in her chest, a presence that would remain long after he had vanished into the wild. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the emotion settle, not in tears or speech, but in quiet gratitude. The plains were no less dangerous, no less wild, yet in that moment, human and lion had transcended fear, distance, and time. The unthinkable gesture, the simple act of pressing his head against her shoulder, had sealed a connection that would endure forever. As she rose, brushing the dust from her clothes, she knew this was not an ending but a continuation. Life in the savannah would go on, threats and beauty intertwining as they always did. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the lion moved freely, carrying the memory of her hand, her voice, and the years of trust they had rebuilt together. The last light faded, casting the plains in muted gold, and for the first time in days, she felt a quiet peace. Their reunion had been tested by distance, injury, and danger. Yet, it had prevailed, leaving behind a bond more profound than she could have imagined, a bond marked by patience, courage, and the unspoken language between a human and a lion.